WoW Killer is a production of amove.tv. Check out amove TV for many more podcasts, multiple about Blizzard games. And for more of Taliesin's WoW coverage, check out Taliesin and Evitel on YouTube and twitch.tv. Garrett and Taliesin are never late. They arrive precisely when they mean to. We're back! And so is WoW Killer!
Hooray! We're back! WoW Killer! I just said what you said, but like louder.
That's all you gotta do. That's all you gotta do.
That might be what I do all show, if I'm honest with you. Yeah! Wow!
I mean, typically it's not louder, it's longer. I'd say it's
longer!
Longer form. Dude. I missed you, fine listeners, and I missed you. Not as much as the listeners, but I still missed you, Taliesin.
Oh, you talking to me? I missed you, I guess. I miss you every day anyway. So when WoW Killer doesn't happen, it just makes it all the more obvious. It just hurts all the more. That's all. But I've learned to live with it.
Yeah, it's
fine. Over it, actually.
You know, I feel like we need like a tagline. So, you know, just let people know like your favorite irregular WoW podcast.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes us sound like we're a funny shape.
I mean, I'm not going to speak for you, Taliesin, but I'm a funny shape.
It's like you go to the market, you go to the grocer, and you're like, "Yo, give me one of those WoW podcasts." And he's picking, and like they're all like beautiful formed WoW podcasts at the front. And he's like, "Yeah, I'll give you a WoW pod." And he gets the bag out, and he puts like one or two of the nice ones in, but then all the rest he's putting in from behind the counter. And you're like, "Whoa! What's this? What's this WoW podcast? This is an irregular one. What's this? Oh, it's horrible. What is it?"
All right, somebody, I want you to.
That is.
I want you to Photoshop Cairne hair on Taliesin and put that whoa quote on there. It's gonna be great. He wants to talk to the grocer's manager.
Give me one of them nice regular ones. Give me one of them. Give me one of them shiny ones. One of them GM ones. Yeah. Oh, lovely.
Yeah.
But no, we are irregular in time and appearance. But we're here now. So, like, it's no point complaining now. It's no point wistfully thinking about things and regret. No regrets in this show. Or will there be? Because we're talking about death.
We are going to be talking about that today. So this is, as you know, WoW Killer, your favorite single subject, very strictly single subject World of Warcraft podcast.
Focus.
Laser. Hyper. We are the sniper of World of Warcraft podcasts. We are here for one thing and one thing only, and that's to talk about a single topic. And today's topic is going to be major character deaths in World of Warcraft. For no reason. I can't seem to think of anything that happened in the game excruciatingly recently that would make us want to broach this subject, Taliesin.
I know what it is. It's because spoiler for Shadowlands, spoiler for the pre-patch, and also actually throughout this show, probably spoiler for just story of WoW in general. We're going to spoil every WoW expansion today.
I would be
and really... the movie, Durotan dies.
Yes.
Gutted.
Yes. I would be very surprised if folks that listen to this podcast are not up to date on 99.9% of the spoilers that we are going to discuss.
Well, here's the thing, right? It is on NA and EU live now, okay? It's in the game. It's there. It's doable. There's no build-up, okay? There's no, rep you have to build or something like that. It's not gated in any way.
It's
there.
Really unceremonious.
It's a spoiler anymore.
If
it's in the game, it's not a spoiler, right?
Yes. Also, if it's like 17 tweets from Wowhead because there were bugs with loot drops, it's not a spoiler anymore either.
And also, like, WoW themselves, Blizzard did put it in like the story trailer that came out 2 weeks ago. They blatantly showed.
Okay. All right. No. I'm gonna contest you there because.
Oh really?
Yeah, because I didn't play this on the test realm. So I didn't know. I knew that. I mean, I kind of had a vague idea, but honestly, I legitimately was not thinking about it when that trailer broke. And I was like, "Oh, cool, That'll probably be an interesting.
Well, that's really interesting. You genuinely thought that?
I just didn't think
How
about it.
How oblivious are you?
I just didn't think about it.
It's fine.
No, like, listen, I heard, like, I didn't play the thing on the PTR that we're dancing around. I don't even know why we're dancing around it because everyone knows what we're talking about.
Nathanos Blightcaller dies. We kill Nathanos Blightcaller. He's dead now. We go to Marisstead. Okay, so the the pre-patch starts. It's now started properly, okay? It's not just, character updates and things like that. It's also the first week of questing, the Scourge invasions, although I've logged in plenty of times, I'm yet to see a Scourge invasion.
Same.
I have to admit.
Yeah, I played
I
quite
don't know
a bit
where
yesterday.
they are or what they're doing, but I am Scourgeless. We are sans Scourge right now. And it's really funny because everywhere we go, all the quest givers are like, God, what about all those Scourge everywhere, eh? It's a bit rough, isn't it? And I'm like, what?
What are you talking about?
What
are you doing? What are you doing? Yeah, it's a good thing that there's a quest out in out in TOC in Icecrown that turns you into a zombie, because otherwise I would have had 0 time spent as a zombie.
Yeah, it sucks. It's really bad. It's like, and the thing is, I logged into the NA realms like as they went live, right? And you'd have thought, have a Scourge invasion live for when you first log it, for when the thing first, starts up and goes live. Have a Scourge invasion going then, because if you go and speak to the NPCs and they're all like, "Oh, the Scourge are everywhere, aren't they? Oh, it's bad, isn't it?" And there aren't Scourge everywhere. You can go, "Well, there probably were earlier." But if you've just logged in after reset and you speak to them, and there's no Scourge anywhere, there's never been any Scourge anywhere. They're just making it up. At the point that the NPCs were telling me about the Scourge invasions everywhere, I know for a fact there had not been a single Scourge invasion happen on that realm up until that point. They were literally lying to my faces. They were predicting the future, which now just makes me think that they might be responsible. He who smelt it, dealt it. The Scourge invasion.
I'm going to defend them and say that, like, 2 yellow exclamation points later, you're seeing forced NPC Scourge invasions, so at least it's, keeping you
maybe
in the world a little bit, even though none of it's not until, like, the last one, at least on the Alliance side, you're in Darkshire, where it's like, all right, now I want you to kill Scourge, even though the last 3 suckers you were talking to were completely surrounded by undead, and they're just like, no, just listen, I just want to have a chat. I know what's going on around me, but I just want to have a chat. And could you go chat to the next person? Thanks. Like, so are you sure you don't want some help? Because I'm a great champion of the Alliance. I am like do you see the title? Do you see the title of my paladin? Because this title designates that I killed the last Lich King. Okay, I might know a thing or two about dealing with the problem that you have in Redridge. But you just want me to go? Okay, you just want me to? I'm glad. Okay, cool. See you later.
Scourge invasion, Garrett, is because they're scared of you. They're all like, oh, hang on. It's that guy. He's got most of his undeath slaying set. Stay away from him.
I meant to send you a screenshot, by the way, Taliesin, because I want you to know that I spent over 300 gold transmogging just for you, my paladin, to wear the teal and purple judgment set from the original Scourge invasion right before.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So.
I would give much for the teal and the judgment set.
And do you know what I noticed? Because continue going with this laser focus on our single topic today. You know what else I noticed? I don't have the gloves.
Are you
Somehow
sure?
I missed the gloves.
The gloves don't fit the set. The gloves are like random other gloves.
Oh, are they?
Yeah. The gloves don't fit the set. So they're not judgment gloves. They're like different gloves.
That makes a lot of sense then, because I definitely ran a search for Blessed, and something came up, and I was like, this isn't right. So I had to I spent a good 5 minutes of my life that I'll never get back, Taliesin, going through trying to find gloves that somewhat match the set. It was a real...
And then forgot to send me a screenshot.
Then forgot to make you jealous with the screenshot. But that's all right. I'm making you jealous now with words. It's all right.
It's true. I'm not sure I can carry on with this show. I'm basically just burning up with envy, but also disappointment at the lack of Scourge invasion. And it turned out it was your fault. So thanks for that.
It's all my paladin's just too good at killing them, Taliesin. I'm sorry. It's just.
And so once they've told you all about these Scourge invasions that don't exist, They give you some quests to go to Ice Crown, which I couldn't be bothered doing. And also, they give you a quest to go to Marisstead, and kill one Nathanos Blightcaller, because they found him in his house. And you go there, and he's a really, really hard world boss. And you need like quite a big raid to actually kill him. And
man, I had such an underwhelming personal experience with Nathanos.
Tell me about
it. It was like, you probably had
is that a honest impression, or is this you talking about the pre-patch?
No, this is me talking about the pre-patch, which is just like, it was like my 17th time killing whatever world boss it was for the world quest that week. Like I'm flying out there, and you probably do this. You're at that distance from the boss where you feel comfortable enough to queue up for a group,
Yes.
So I do that, and like they're not letting me in. And so I'm like, all right, well, I'm just going to keep flying. And I get there, and there's just a group about to kill him. He's at like 15%. So I just landed, started beating on him, and he died within 3 seconds. I didn't even get to see any of the mechanics.
Gutted.
Yep.
Good work.
That was my experience killing Nathanos. And then the cinematic bugged out, and I didn't get to see it in game.
Yeah, well, exactly. And that's the thing, because I spent all of BFA just playing on my EU account, which I love, obviously. But what that meant was, obviously, BFA had a lot of patches where, on the 0.5 patches and things like that, and on the pre-patch as well, there would be a bit of questing and a new cinematic released. And the cinematic would be like the climax of the questing, right? So I got really sick in BFA of, as an EU player, when these 0.5 patches went live, like a new cinematic would hit, and it would be up on Wowhead and on YouTube and stuff. And I'd have to wait until the next day to play the questing if I wanted to see it in game. And obviously I didn't. I'd watch it on Wowhead, and then it's like, cool, I've seen it. So the questing was less whelming as a result. So I thought, well, going into Shadowlands, what I'll do is I will start an NA character and get an NA character up to 50 ready to start. Perfect opportunity with the new leveling system and whatnot. And I got my old NA account, which I hadn't played since the first week of Warlords of Draenor, so it's got nothing on it at all. I started playing it towards the end of Mists of Pandaria, and I finished playing it at the beginning of WoD, so there's very little on there. The only good thing I've got on that entire account is the goat mount that you get from the farm. That's the only thing I've got. And so I leveled up a character, went through Pandaria, thanks very much, got to 50, and it launched on NA yesterday, these quests and a cinematic, and this is the exact reason why I started a character on NA. I was like, whoa, all these EU creators crying because they haven't got an NA character. I was like, I'm just going to jump on, I'm just going to play these quests, and I'm just going to see the cinematic in-game where it's higher resolution, and it's just nicer, and it's just louder and better. So I went on there and got to Nathanos Blightcaller and put a raid together, which didn't take very long because I'm quite a famous streamer. And we started killing him. And then it's a really hard fight. Okay, so you're going to die. Like, a lot of people die in this fight. Most people in the group died once, especially if they were melee, because he drops like loads of green goo all around him. And, you got to get out of it. And you're not very good at that when you're killing a world boss, are you? So I died. I got hit. I was massively undergeared because I'd only dinged 50 literally the day before. So I had no gear. I was still in like questing greens and stuff from when I was like level 40.
Yeah, you haven't gotten your extremely generic looking ketchup gear from
yeah,
TSC
exactly.
yet.
So I got absolutely squished, and I was like, oh, all right then. So I released to run back to my corpse, and my corpse was about half a mile away. And as I was running back, he died. My group killed him because they were ballers. But when I got there, I had no loot, no cinematic. Because I was dead and because I was running back to my corpse,
Yep.
no loot, no cinematic.
So I was alive when he died, and it did like the dark, like the black fade in, like it was about to play it, and then it just faded back to the game, and that was it.
Dear.
I did get loot though. I did get loot. I got the sweet looking night elf sword thingy.
So I just wonder how many people are missing the very excellent cinematic.
Yeah, I had the exact same thought as you. Is like I know because I saw people posting links to the video. I'm like, no, I want to see it in game. I want to go experience it as the World of Warcraft devs wanted me to experience it.
Yeah.
And went in, and I'm like hours. No, not hours. It didn't take me that long, but whatever. I'm like real proud of myself. And it's like, well, nope, never mind. I'm not going to see it in game. I'm going to see it with a Wowhead watermark in the lower right hand corner. That's how I'm going to see it.
At a slightly lower resolution with lots of artifacting. Yeah. And I was exactly the same. I wanted to see it as the devs intended too, which is seeing a bit of it on the story trailer and then doing it in game, just like they intended. And I was so angry. I was so pissed off that I'd gone to all this trouble. And you know, if I didn't know better, how is anyone supposed to know there even is a cinematic? You know, so stupid. I
don't know.
It's a really good cinematic.
I kind of enjoy this stuff, man. Like we just had this talk. I just want to share my experience. I don't get mad when things are wonky. I kind of enjoy them, and these types of things stick with me. Like when shit breaks in World of Warcraft, I tend to remember it, and it just becomes a fun memory.
Sure. So when I logged on in Orgrimmar, there are about 10,000 people, because I on NA I play in Wormrest Accord, right, which is quite a big RP server, because I love RP servers. I'm all about that. I don't RP, I just like them. And RP servers have different sharding rules, in case you don't know. Like shards are bigger on RP realms. You can fit more people onto them than you can on non-RP realms. That's so you can have big RP events and things like that. And that's one of the reasons I like playing on RP realms, is like there are literally just more people in your shard. Like, so if you're in Orgrimmar, it's literally going to be more full than if you're on a different server, because you can just see more people because the shards are bigger. And I think that's really cool. But yeah, there were like 10,000 people all bunched on Lorthamar, the quest giver. And everything was breaking, everything was lagging, everything was terrible. And that kind of jank, I'm all here for. Like, I'm totally for that. That's totally fun. But not getting a cinematic, and therefore maybe not knowing ever that there was a cinematic, when it was such a good and important cinematic as well.
It was phenomenal.
It was so good.
Oh, God.
Someone on my stream said he thought it was rubbish. And I said, just out of interest, what's your favorite movie? And he said, Forrest Gump. So there you go. If you like Forrest Gump, you might not like this cinematic.
I mean, I do kind of like Forrest Gump, but...
Well, I'm surprised you like this cinematic.
I was expecting that...
my loosely correlated rule.
I was expecting that to have a much more, like, punchline, like, popularly considered to be a shitty movie. Like, I thought it was going to be, like, Snyder Cut Justice League was going to be that dude's answer. And
maybe.
Shame.
Forrest Gump is a terrible movie, just so you know.
Forrest Gump is
fine.
It's
great. I love it.
It's fine.
Awesome. It's terrible. It's not a good film.
How would I reply to every tweet ever sent to me about concerns over hurricanes hitting Florida if it wasn't for that scene of Lieutenant Dan yelling at the storm on his boat with the American flag waving behind him in the middle of a storm?
Fine. Okay, I'll give you that bit is okay. Everything else about that movie is terrible.
I'm not going to get into this right now. Laser focus. Nope. Back on it.
Think about it this way.
So let's kick off main character deaths by talking about Jenny from Forrest Gump.
I'm not going to leave this. If Forrest Gump never got made, then they probably never would have made Curious Case of Benjamin Button.
You know, Taliesin, if you don't like a movie, you don't have to watch it.
Well, how would I know if I don't like it?
Because I saw a trailer for Benjamin Button and I'm like, that looks like shite. I'm not watching that.
I don't like it. Listen to your review. We've already established you have no taste. And you'd make me watch loads of bad movies anyway. I'd be like, should I watch Forrest Gump? And you'd be like, yeah, watch Forrest Gump. It's a really good movie. And I'd be like, it's the last time I ever listened to Garrett.
I saw a single trailer. I saw a single trailer, Taliesin, for Benjamin Button, and thought to myself, that looks like a crap movie, and I still to this date haven't watched it.
Yeah, so. Sometimes you can tell, in fairness. Sometimes you can tell.
Yeah, like sometimes it says directed by Zack Snyder, and you can just tell. You can just tell.
Oh, my word. Oh, my word. Wow. There's been a clip going around. Look, we'll get back to that in a sec, okay? there's a clip going around. I shared this on my Twitter of the new Miles Morales game, right? The Spider-Man game.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. It looks amazing and I can't wait because I love Spider-Man. And the great thing I love about Spider-Man is always the best superhero, no matter who Spider-Man is. Like whether it's Peter Parker or Miles Morales or anyone else. Like Spider-Man's just always the best superhero because the whole concept of Spider-Man is so great. So like there's this clip going around of the game where Miles Morales like is talking to this deaf girl. Okay, because he's talking to some deaf girl, and they're signing to each other, and so like there's a really good bit where I learned what the sign language for Spider-Man is, which apparently isn't made up. Like this has always been the sign language, the American Sign Language for Spider-Man. It's this.
It's actually the web shooter, like what you would do with your hand.
Sorry,
That's officially what it is in sign. That's amazing. I didn't know that.
Yeah, exactly. Here, podcast listening audience, let me show you what the sign language for this thing is. Let me conduct the rest of this podcast that you're listening to.
This does not work at all. At all.
You'll speak American Sign Language, right? This can be a great podcast. And I was like, this is brilliant. Miles Morales is so cool. And this girl is so cool. And like, it's just really nice. And it's just a lovely character moment. And then I thought, if Zack Snyder was directing this, he'd have shot her.
Oh, for crying out
He'd
loud.
have just shot her. Probably to some 60s rock record. Some shit record from the 60s would start playing and he'd shoot her.
Oh, okay. All right. Listen, I'm all for disparaging Zack Snyder, but let's not disparage 60s rock music. I draw the line. I'm drawing a line somewhere, and it's here, Taliesin.
Is there a 60s rock song or a 70s rock song about shooting a deaf girl? Because that's the song he would have chosen. He'd have gone, oh, I've got a really good song for this bit. It's the chorus goes, shooting a deaf girl. And I'm like, that's a perfect song for this scene. Do you know why? Because in the scene, I'm shooting a deaf girl. And like this, it just syncs up really well. They do that in The Boys all the time as well. It's like someone's eating a sandwich and like the song playing will be the eating a sandwich song. Or like, you know, a school will set on fire and they'll play Schools Out. You know? It's good work, whoever chooses the music for The Boys.
This has officially gone so deep, I have no idea how to segue out of this back into our topic. I really don't. I've got nothing.
I know someone runs away from their wedding and they're like, I've got a great song for this.
So
nice day for a white wedding. How did you know? How did you know?
So speaking of finding a way to tie this into how excited we are for the next generation of consoles, let's talk about a game you can't play on console.
Speaking of games I can't play, World of Warcraft pre-patch Shadowlands. It's so broken. And what was I saying? Oh yeah, so the cinematic's amazing, okay? And it's badass and it's very important because it shows, like this is a spoiler, obviously, but it shows us getting totally kill stolen by Tyrande. So you're fighting Nathanos in Maristed, and he's all like, "Ha ha! Is that the best you can do?" And you're like, "Hey, dude, I'm walking back to my corpse right now. Can you be a bit less sassy?" And then the sky goes dark. And presumably, like, we've stopped attacking him, right? So presumably he's beaten us essentially, even though we just got his health down. And we're all like lying around like, oh no, oh, who will ever beat him? We can't do it. This raid that we put together on Group Finder. Suddenly the sky goes dark and you get the eclipse thing that you get in Darkshore, which is awesome and like really badass. And that's, you know Tyrande's coming. And then there's like misty around the edges everywhere. And then through this dark mist, an arrow whistles and hits him so hard that it catapults him back into the darkness and like pins him against the wall of his own house, Garrett, of his own house that he had in life. And then like Tyrande arrives, Tyrande who, lest us not forget, up until halfway through BFA, used to wear stiletto heels because she's such a great warrior.
Yes.
In her not at all sexist like model that she had, it's like
have you seen her model in Heroes of the Storm?
Yeah.
She is as one would describe, bootylicious.
She is,
yeah.
And she is dummy thick in this cinematic as well. I wish I'd been in the room. I'd love to have been in the room when someone in like halfway through BFA was like, do you think it's about time we gave like the warrior queen, or not queen, but you know what I mean, the warrior leader of the Night Elves, like some clothes that maybe look like she has ever fought once in her entire life.
Yeah, because they do it with the Wardens, right? Like, they figured that out back in Warcraft 3. That, like, the Wardens are these great warriors. Maybe they should have ball and armor. And it just took them a while to get there with, honestly, both Tyrande and Sylvanas went through this. So Sylvanas basically had, like, a cheerleader uniform for a while.
I'm still a big fan of that, was it the Wrath model?
Yes.
The one which is just, like, pure skimp. Pure skimp.
Listen,
like outrageous.
Listen, as someone who was really into goth anime chicks and still is, I'm totally down with that. That's totally my jam. But yeah, it's also, I'm also down with, like, you know, actually looking like you want to go kick someone's teeth in.
Yeah, New More Sylvanas kind of is the best of both worlds. She looks amazing. But so yeah, Tyrande comes along and Nathanos is like, this makes things very interesting. And the voice, like, I've never liked the voice of Nathanos. I've always thought,
why? I do not understand. Why does everyone dump on Nathanos? Nathanos' voice is amazing.
Because it's like cheesily evil.
Oh,
like,
I don't care. Look at him. He is a block of evil cheese.
Well, that's the thing. Yeah, exactly. So, like, in this, but he's never really done anything. Like, he's just like some kind of, you know, second, you know, like left-hand man sort of thing. I never felt like he'd earned his cheesy villainy voice.
He is literally Sylvanas' like, I've got no other term. He's Sylvanas' fuckboy. That's Nathanos. And I think he lives up to that so well. It sucks that, like, all of that information comes out of the game in short stories, but still.
It's fair. But I think the voice actor does an incredible job in this cinematic for Nathanos. I think, like, helped by some really amazing facial animation, which has come on leaps and bounds.
Oh god, yeah.
Since last expansion, even
the pre-rendered in-game cutscenes, they're just.
And I think this might be the best example of kind of like face animation in one of these types of scenes that we've seen, and helped by like I say, some award-winning Nathanos voice acting. I think it's absolutely incredible. And they square up. He picks up his two axes and they start fighting. And it's a bit like, you know, Sylvanas versus Saurfang, I guess, from last expansion. You know, she's not even trying. She doesn't have to. She's just like, jum, like, you know, parrying him and dancing around him. And then just like slashes his tummy and he falls on his knees. He's all like, oh, but he's given all that sass talk, you know, at the end, like he does. And she holds the blade up to his throat, but she's not even looking at him. She's looking off into the middle distance because she can't even be bothered looking at him. And she's like, where is she? And he says this amazing line. He goes, with him, of course. And just sounds like a really jealous boyfriend sort of thing. Saying that Sylvanas is with a jailer and what have you. And then just totally like just lays into Tyrande with the whole, you know, with all the burned souls of your night elves and stuff like that. And in mid kind of speech, she just slashes his throat and he dies.
Yeah, dude.
And that's the end of the Thanos.
So here for all of this, like, as someone who has spent the last year plus of his life complaining about how much he doesn't like where Sylvanas ended up burning and the motivation behind Teldrassil, I love what they are doing with post-burnt Teldrassil. Like, it's just been totally great. It's led to such great villainy. They're having fun with it, and I am enjoying the fun that they're having with it.
Totally. I think it's really fantastic. I thought she was going to behead him, but she didn't.
I really did just want to see just the like cheesy Tim Burton Sleepy Hollow, just like single slice head, just flips in the air. But alas, we didn't get it.
Just like a blood curdling, squelchy, slashy sound instead. But it was awesome.
Yeah, it was good.
I loved it. Brilliant cinematic, and
dude, we were so busy being worried about Garrosh 2.0, we weren't on the lookout for Scorn Jaina 2.0, which is what Tyrande is now. That's where
it was
we
brilliant.
arrived.
And Tyrande clearly took no pleasure from it. There was no kind of relief for her, no triumph.
Dude, the way she delivers for Teldrassil as she walks, it's just such an afterthought. Like,
yeah, totally. And then very symbolically slinks back off into the darkness and disappears back into the darkness. There's no kind of catharsis. There's no kind of end of her journey. She's just as hollow and empty as she was before. She knows she's got to go into the Shadowlands and hunt down Sylvanas. So yeah, it's really good, and it's a fitting end for a major character. Not all major characters get lovely cinematics to see that. Obviously his death would be a bit more meaningful if in like 2 weeks' time we weren't going to the land of the dead. I suspect it's probably not the last we're going to see of Nathanos in this expansion, but maybe, who knows? I mean, he's going straight to the Maw, and that's where Sylvanas is. So it's not like.
I hope they play up. I hope they do more with that jealous boyfriend angle that you mentioned, because I thought the exact same thing when he alluded to the jailer. And if this is going to sound like a critique, but it's not. If I could have had more to this scene, I would have liked them to play with that more. Yeah. I love this as it was, but I find that angle interesting, because Nathanos has been so one note, and I don't think it's a bad thing. Clearly, I like Nathanos. Like, I like what they've done with him. I think it's just a fun, evil bastard, and I think I like that archetype. But now that Sylvanas has kind of leveled up, like, she's clearly has bigger fish to fry and larger concerns. I think it'd just be so much more interesting if we kind of focus on Nathanos as this pawn that's just been left behind.
Yeah.
And I think it'd be really interesting to explore that.
That's why we're kind of related to him, because the kind of the balance in Nathanos, because he is this big cartoon villain with his stupid big cartoon villain voice, and literally for everything he's like, hero, go and get me some bear hides, and then you get the bear hides. He's like, these bear hides are rubbish.
And with the bugs yesterday of him not giving loot, like, I saw probably 17 variations. I saw like 17 variations on Twitter of this is the most on-brand Nathanos shit I've ever seen. And it's because they're so right. They're so absolutely right that Nathanos not giving you loot for killing him is the most on-character thing they could have possibly done.
But I mean, the balance in Nathanos' character has always been his devotion to Sylvanas, right? So, that you see a humanity in him, because he gives you shit all of the time, and he's really annoying, and he's a comedy cartoon villain. But then you see him with Sylvanas, and he's got like a genuine respect and love and dedication to her, and that goes a long way to kind of balance it out. So having that be kind of snubbed by Sylvanas recently at the end of the Shadows Rising novel, and going into this, and that obvious kind of jealousy in his voice when he talks about the jailer, which is quite understandable. That's actually like quite affecting, and it's really nicely done, and it makes me feel a bit sorry for him. I'm sorry that he's dead.
I mean, he's really been used.
Yeah,
like,
totes, man. That's what kind of gives him the certain nihilism that comes through in his sort of last stand at Marestead. There's almost kind of this manic energy to it.
Yeah, I really want them to play up just the kind of like put upon loner goth. Like that's where I want them to take Nathanos.
Yeah, I think that'd be really good.
I hope we find him in a Shadowlands like diner drinking coffee and smoking a cigarette. Like, that's where I want to find him now.
Yeah, but he's found his way there. He's with Sylvanas as we speak. And with my loot still probably.
I hope when he ends up as the inevitable Shadowlands raid boss, I hope he just drops the same loot that he was supposed to drop during this.
I hope he doesn't drop any loot at all again.
Again, just Taking my
but it got me thinking. It got me thinking about as we were talking about what we would talk about for this episode. It got me thinking about character deaths in WoW. Something that I think genuinely we've been getting a lot more of in recent expansions. I think that because
almost like they knew we were going to go to the land of the dead, and that
almost
it gave them a little more freedom if they were maybe sitting on the fence of like, do I really want to say goodbye to this character? And then someone from the story department comes down, hey, just a reminder, 2 expansions from now we're going to the land of the dead. Oh, in that case, let's just off full Jin. F it.
Yeah.
Who cares?
I think that's one element of it, but I genuinely think another element
is doing more of a bit there than actually believing that's the reason they started killing people.
I also do think that's true, like it was also very funny and it was a good bit and we'll all remember it and chuckle about it later.
Thanks. I live for your approval.
It is true for sure. But I think one of the other reasons is well, it's the long running franchise syndrome as well. As a story gets longer and how like soap operas, the longer they run, the more ridiculous they get, right? And any TV show.
Or long running comic arcs and stuff like that.
Yeah, the more you have to rely on kind of shock and awe a little bit in your storylines, and character deaths are a great way of doing that. But another reason I think is because of the way that cinematics have become so much more prevalent in the game. It's like, if you are going to kill a major character now, there's a really good way of sending them off. Like, they get a cinematic now. Yeah. That's a really good way of saying goodbye to a character.
They have like 2 high quality versions of cinematics to pull from too. Like in BFA, we got it in both, pre-rendered in-game cinematics, but then also full on, CG cutscenes.
Yeah. And I think that's amazing. And as a result, I think we've seen, particularly in the last 3 expansions or so, some like really brilliant and well-told deaths from some really kind of big characters in WoW. But let's go back a little bit further to the earlier days of World of Warcraft, where I guess it was kind of harder to have such an impact with character deaths. Like if you're talking about like vanilla and things like that, the story was so much less. Oh, hello.
I'm still here.
Oh, okay, good. The story. I just closed Discord by mistake.
I'm like, what? What's the problem? I'm still here.
That's just what I did. I just closed Discord. Get over it.
Just disappeared to the upside down.
I'd never done that before in a call. I was like, am I still here? Can I do what I want? Can I say what I meant? But like, yeah. I guess it was hard. Like, obviously the narrative in vanilla wasn't as important as it is now. And you could make a case that it was nowhere near as important in Burning Crusade even. And
it was more meandering, and it went a lot of different ways. It didn't have as hard story arcs as we do now. There were like arcs through specific quest lines, but there were so many different quest lines, and it was so disparate. But yeah, and then at the same time, we both shared the same critique of BFA, that it was like too many story directions.
Yeah,
pick one. Yeah. But that's kind of, I think, the exception and not the rule of modern WoW in terms of how they tell their stories.
Yeah, I also don't think BFA had too many story directions. I just think it lacked a kind of unifying, overarching kind of arc. I feel like it were all strands were there, and it just needed something to tie them all together a bit more and to dominate a bit more, rather than all being equal, perhaps. But anyway, in Burning Crusade, obviously you got Illidan, who you were kind of gearing up to beat from the beginning. I know that wasn't the final raid in the end, but that's how most players saw it as they were playing through the expansion, I think.
I mean, the original
Black Temple was there.
Sorry, in Black Temple? No, not really. No, I mean, there was like, for its time, like cool dialogue and stuff, but no, there was no. And so we had to wait until Legion for our end of BC cinematic.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, actually, genuinely. Yeah. So we did get it eventually, but I mean, so I didn't play in Vanilla or Burning Crusade because I'm a scrub. But I mean, were there any kind of character deaths that hit you particularly hard as you were playing? Any that you even remember? Any kind of, or just NPC deaths in general?
I mean, Tally, who am I? Freaking Arthas, man. The Arthas cinematic at the end of ICC.
Oh no, but that wasn't in Burning Crusade or Vanilla though, was it?
Oh, you're talking about the first two. Okay, I thought you were just kind of overall moving the
no,
conversation
we'll get
along.
to that. We'll get to.
No.
There's nothing there to the extent where, everyone's first answer is always Mancrick's wife. And like this completely meaningless kind of thing.
I don't know the NPC's name. There's a similar quest in Darkshore on the Alliance side where a male night elf has to go find his wife and you eventually reunite him with her spirit, and that's pretty sad. And you can't do it anymore. That quest is gone from the game. You have to go back to Classic for it, but I don't know the NPCs. I remember that one kind of affecting me, but clearly not enough to put any names to memory.
Hey, there's a lot of names in World of Warcraft. I can't remember half of them most of the time. Like there's no shame in that. I can't imagine Steve Danusa has them all to hand. Like he can't just summon them. He has to go and look them up as well. Don't feel any shame about that. So it was.
None of it hit me, but and I didn't kill him when it was current content at the time, but in BC, I remember hearing that we had killed Kael'thas, that was the last raid boss of Tempest Keep, and being like, oh shit, that's because I had played Warcraft 3, and it was a major drive for me to want to go and play World of Warcraft. And so that was big news for me. Nothing during Vanilla really landed. I knew who Ragnaros was, I knew who Onyxia was, but it was oh, whatever. These weren't major characters in Warcraft 3, and I was still struggling to hit level 30. So it was whatever to me. And it wasn't like there were in-game cutscenes in those raids when those characters died that you'd go to YouTube and go watch and be like, oh my God, this is amazing. There was nothing like that.
Oh yeah, people are bringing up in the chat that there's a good quest in the Ghostlands where with the Ghost family. Is it the Redfield family? I can't remember, but the Ghost daughter who you help out.
Oh,
you ever play that one? I remember that one.
In Ghostland, Blood Elf Starting Zone?
No, Ghostlands. Eastern Kingdoms somewhere.
I had no recollection of this whatsoever. Plaguelands.
Oh, Plaguelands. Oh, okay. I remember it.
Okay. Yeah, I don't.
Pretty good. Onyxia dies in Vanilla, but that's about it, really. To be honest, out of people you could call main characters, and it's not until you get to BC that sort of major lore characters start dropping, and it's important to the story, sort of thing.
Yeah. Yeah, but even then, it was pretty unceremonious.
Yeah. But I mean, you came from Warcraft 3 and having loved Warcraft 3, so presumably you were quite invested in the character of Illidan to some degree. What was the feeling as you were going through Burning Crusade that he would be biting it?
I didn't really think of it much at the time, and then it wasn't until I started hearing dev interviews about how they're going to handle Arthas during Wrath of the Lich King that I realized why it didn't hit me at the time, which was Illidan was non-freaking existent through Burning Crusade. You never saw him until you went and fought him at the end of Black Temple. And then, folks, if you weren't around for it or you don't remember, in the lead up to Wrath of the Lich King, they were talking about how Arthas was going to be more of a presence throughout Wrath of the Lich King because they felt that was kind of something that was missing from the lead up to fighting Illidan in Burning Crusade. And I think they were absolutely right. Because then, it was really noticeable at the beginning of Wrath of the Lich King, Arthas showing up and taunting you. I think Borean Tundra, you go to the top of one of those ziggurats and he shows up and totally just starts talking mad smack to your character, and you're like, holy shit, the Lich King is here, and I just started leveling up. Because it was something that we hadn't experienced before.
Yeah.
And then also, God help you if you did the... If you were such an Arthas fanboy as I was, and you actually went and did the Death Knight starting zone, it was oh my God, he's right there. But yeah, it's you're at. I mean, point made. First two World of Warcrafts, OG and Burning Crusade, character deaths just didn't have the weight that they started having in Wrath of the Lich King.
Yeah, and I mean, Arthas isn't even the only one.
No, it happened with Bolvar is the first one I remember. And frankly, I mean, that's it.
And young Saurfang.
It's almost like Taliesin. Once we started getting pre-rendered in-game cutscenes, that character deaths started becoming more pertinent.
It's funny that, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
It's really weird.
It's almost like as they improved their storytelling, we cared more about the story that they were telling.
Yeah, yeah. So strange how that happens.
Yeah, but Varrock, not Varrock, Draenor. What the hell is Saurfang's son's first name?
Oh, is it Dranoth? I'm not sure.
I think it's Draenor. But yeah, that's a unique one because there's not a cinematic for it. But the VO that Saurfang delivers has stuck with a lot of players, myself included.
Yeah,
because I did not remember Varrock Saurfang much. I barely remembered him. He's not a character that really lives in my memory. But when we got that first cinematic and there was that flash of him in the snow with his son, like it all came rushing back to me. I'm like, holy shit, that's the end of the fight in ICC. Well, basically, I mean, I guess he was nowhere near where it actually happens in game because he's out in some snowy field somewhere as opposed to a landing on the actual tower. But still.
But he's carried him away, he's gone, allow me to take my son. And, is it Varian who's there? Like, yeah, go on, fine.
It depends on if you're Horde or Alliance.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I guess so. But so, yeah, and that was like incredibly effective as well. And it was really nice when the Saurfang cinematic went back to that and kind of almost gave it the send off in modern terms it deserved and set the way for some awesome cinematics in BFA as well, and like just a really good character arc. So there was that, but then also obviously Bolvar at the Wrathgate too. Yeah,
and then picked back up at the beginning of ICC when you realize that he's still pseudo alive and being tortured by Arthas like that. Yeah. But yeah, Wrathgate was a huge surprise to everyone. God, I remember like because all my roommates at college at the time were living together, like us like all hitting it and then spending the next like week talking about it, like, oh, that was so cool, I can't believe they did that. But yeah, I mean, that's really when character deaths started having major impacts and send-offs and implications into the arcs of the story.
Kind of like genuine parts of the plot rather than just the consequences of needing a boss.
Yeah,
as well. Which I think is great. And then, of course, the Ice Crown cinematic kind of, I guess, kind of revolutionized everything and is the very beginning of what we expect from a character death today and a raid ending today as well, as evidenced by the fact that N'Zoth's death in BFA like made people flip out because it just didn't reach those kind of standards.
Yeah, it set an expectation. Yeah, I mean, the expectations have been set like since ICC, as you mentioned. So like that's why we had that reaction, right? It's because we were kind of expecting a little more. And like if a main
character doesn't get that kind of treatment, then we say they've been done dirty. Yeah, it's like, don't you do my boy Tyrion dirty like that? Just killing him in game is like seen as a really pathetic death now, which is super interesting.
Yeah, and yet I don't think anyone would complain that the Saurfang like send off was light. I don't know. Maybe it's because of when it happened. Like our expectations were still a little low, but like Tyrion's, it's just so unceremonious because the animation's kind of lame. He's just hanging there and like shitty fire is streaming over his body, and then he just does the like unanimated dead human position as he falls into the.
He's got his bubble up, and the fire's breathing over him. And you're like, half, mate, just half.
What are you doing?
Just half. Your bubble's up. You half.
Yeah,
I know how it works.
It's relatively unceremonious. Like Tyrion was like this main character in Wrath of the Lich King that you fought alongside throughout the whole damn expansion, and then he just kind of goes out with a whimper as a side thought in during an unnamed boss that you don't care about in an intro sequence to an expansion. I get it. To me, I kind of look at it, I'm like, yeah, it just wasn't really handled with the same weight and gravitas that other characters, like even Sourfang before it, got.
Yeah, sure. Or of course, it's worth pointing out that wasn't actually his death, because if you are a paladin and you do the Retribution artifact, the Ashbringer artifact quest line, he is still alive, just barely, in that. So like you actually see him die only if you're a rep paladin. Like properly.
Well, that was the first thing I went and got and completely forgot that fact. So it didn't really stick with me.
I never forget it because I'm that kind of annoying guy. But Arthur's death is the one that set that standard to the extent where, like, you know, the old meme, which isn't quite so prevalent anymore, but the old meme of, you know, tell them that the Lich King is dead and WoW has died with it, sort of thing. Like the idea that it's like, is there any point even telling this story anymore? It's reached this very natural kind of conclusion. And an arc that started back in Warcraft 3 has kind of come back round, and it felt like it could genuinely be a feasible ending for WoW, to the extent where, you know, the next expansion was literally like, oh, and then the world blows up. Then the world literally gets ripped asunder and it's all blown up now. So, yeah, it's all completely different. I mean, they almost had to do a hard reset in a way.
It was the closest thing we'll get to WoW 2.
Yeah, probably.
Like,
yeah.
But, yeah, it basically ushers in this kind of modern sense of storytelling within World of Warcraft, which is so directly linked to like these main character deaths, because it's so often when we get these cinematics.
Yeah, it's true. And that's kind of changed, because it used to be that I say that like the first ones were Wrathgate and Arthas, I guess, but then WoW cinematics were kind of used mostly to show like bits of a battle or a fight and things like that. And they were very much more action-centric than kind of character or emotion or even story beat-centric. It was always like, here is the airship crashing, or, you know, here is like the Hosen and the Jinyu, they're going to fight each other, and oh no, the Shah has been released and stuff like that. And it was that kind of thing.
We had a lot of that interspersed in Cataclysm and Mists, but we also still had major story beats, because in Mists we had like the whole Veil, you know, and Garrosh like destroying it. And we also, like, the ending cinematic for Cataclysm is lengthy. It doesn't really focus on Deathwing really much at all. It's more about like, it's like the end of a Star Wars movie. Like it's an Ewok song away from being the end of a Star Wars movie. Like,
I hate it. I hate everything about Cataclysm. I'm really sorry. I just hate it. I think it did dragons badly. It did old gods badly.
It did Thrall badly.
It just does everything badly, in my opinion, Cataclysm. Like that, I just dislike it. I think I like it less than WoD in terms of, you know, the story being told and the kind of the protagonists and antagonists of that story.
I mean, it gets it gets a little off the topic of death, but Cataclysm is interesting to me because I think they maybe pointed their cinematic efforts in the wrong direction. Because I remember there's a scene where there's a point where you're out in the Highlands, and Alex Strauza shows up to fight Deathwing. And it should be awesome, but you're just standing there watching it happen, so it's happening with in-game assets, and it's just kind of clunky and weird. Like, if that was a pre-rendered cutscene, that would have been an amazing moment. Totally. And frankly, I think WoW today would have done that as a pre-rendered, you know, in-game cutscene.
Oh, for sure. For sure.
Because, like, they have some interesting words with each other. It's a really important character beat, these two, you know, monoliths, you know, clashing. But, yeah, that Cataclysm is interesting. It's real interesting. And yet I think you're probably the only person I know of that kind of goes out of their way to complain about the ending cinematic for Cataclysm. It's not like the vast sea of outcries for the end of VFA, for N'Zoth's death cinematic.
Yeah. I just felt like I was never even in that expansion. That's the thing. I felt like I was just following Thrall around, you know, helping him out. and watching him get, you'd rescue Thrall from some rocks or whatever. And then instead of everyone going, oh, you're amazing, you saved Thrall from the rocks, everyone goes, Thrall's amazing, isn't he? And it's like, he wasn't that amazing just now when he was made of rock. Just saying, before I saved him. And then you do all the work and you get the dragon's soul, and then you run around on Deathwing's back for a bit, and you do all the hard work, and then Thrall's all like, I will zap him with this thing. And you're like, all right. And you get back down, and you expect everyone to be like, nice one, you're amazing. And everyone's like, Thrall's amazing, isn't he? Thrall's so good. He's having a baby. Did you know? He got married. I know, I was there. I had to watch him get married. That's something I'm
just sitting there going, oh, please don't invite me to the shower. Please don't invite me to the shower. Don't want to buy you a gift.
It's like, do I have to watch his baby be born like I had to watch him get married? Because that was excellent gameplay.
Oh, that was great. Yeah, I'm so glad that we took a break from giant dragon ripping the world in half to go stand around a lake. That was great.
Yeah, and watch Thor get married. And yeah, they get some baddies turn up in the middle of the wedding, but at the end of the day, it's not even the only wedding in Cataclysm. There's like another wedding in Cataclysm as well.
Do you know how this, by the way, do you know how this ties in to the topic of main character deaths? Because the worst thing about that wedding is no one died. If someone had died during that wedding, it would have been more interesting.
You don't have a wedding. You don't make us watch the wedding if no one's going to die. I agree with you. Absolutely, yeah. There's the whole, and then when the baddies turn up, you're like, oh. I don't fancy Thor's wife chances here. I've seen movies. I know what happens when
I've watched Game of Thrones.
A character we don't really know. I know what's going to happen, and I don't fancy Thor's wife's chances here. And everyone comes out completely unscathed, and you're like, hang on, what? Yeah, so I guess what I'm asking for is more character deaths. You're absolutely right. I think that would have spiced up all of the weddings in WoW, honestly. Not the dwarf one. The dwarf one was amazing. Okay, so look, the dwarf one allowed me to choose a tune that I was going to play at the wedding and then play the tune. And that was brilliant. I had some input into that wedding. That was an excellent wedding. I felt like I belonged. Thrall's wedding, I don't know, man. I felt like he just had a spare table. Like he decided he needed this many people. Otherwise, he's wasting money on the food deposit or whatever. And that's why I got invited. I don't think he knew who I was. I don't think he wanted me at his wedding. I didn't get invited to the stag, did I? So, just saying, I didn't feel like that. I felt like a bit of a spare wheel all the way through Cataclysm as a result. I don't like the dragon aspects. I like, they're probably my least favorite thing about WoW. I don't like how WoW does dragons generally. Sometimes they're super cool, but whenever they're super cool, in my opinion, they're kind of like despite the way that they're kind of made and done in WoW. I like my dragons like Earthsea dragons or like Dragon Prince dragons. I like my dragons to be ancient, kind of huge, big, not giving a toss about people because they're just so ancient and clever and big and just awesome and like powerful, and just they just kind of fly around. If you see one, you're like, shit, it's a dragon. Oh my God. And you're out at sea and a dragon's going along and you're like, oh shit, hopefully it won't see us and just destroy us just for a lol.
So do the villain dragons play better for you then? Because I think that's kind of like what Malygos was, and that's how Deathwing was. They were just like these, they were so great. They
lacked a certain majesty. They lacked a certain, and the whole being able to turn into human things was, I never liked that anyway. I think dragons should just be dragons. And like, I know that in Earthsea it's a bit more complicated than that, but essentially, I like, and there's fantasy that does dragons like really well. And for me, they're always like these huge, ancient language speaking, just monolithic, like godlike.
They're Benedict Cumberbatch. That's what they are. I get it, Taliesin. No, I get it. You want all your dragons to be Benedict Cumberbatch.
No, I don't like him.
I couldn't have guessed that you didn't like That's Cumberbatch.
Not true. I've seen him in stuff. I liked him in 12 Years a Slave because his accent was funny. Like Benedict Cumberbatch giving some much needed, may I say, light relief in that movie. Oh, it's all miserable till he gets there, and then you're like, listen to his stupid voice. Like, so what's a ray of sunshine in that movie?
So moving into kind of World of Warcraft as a whole, like what's a character death that really landed with you?
Okay, so nothing in Cataclysm at all.
Clearly, I think that has been made abundantly clear
for me. So for me, I didn't really start getting affected by character deaths in WoW until Mists of Pandaria, where I was pretty sure that Anduin was going to die at various points in that expansion, and I thought that was awesome. I loved how that happened, and just the idea that you knew that you were going to be fighting Garrosh at the end of the expansion as well. So I was kind of banking on a Garrosh death.
Yeah, same. Wouldn't it have been so much better if he did and we didn't get that whole Draenor nonsense?
Yes. Yes, it would have. Can you imagine how much better the world would be? And I don't mean Azeroth, I mean this world. If Garrosh had died at the end of Pandaria.
Yeah.
It would have been awesome. Like, A, no Warlords Draenor, but much more important, B, it would just mean a much more satisfying ending to Mists of Pandaria. And yeah, the Mists of Pandaria ending was cool. It was really good. And like Varian was like a real cool badass. And it's a really nice moment when Vol'jin was chosen as the war chief. And that was really exciting. I really liked that. And you had like Jaina's kind of dismantle the horde, which is a good meme. I like that. But really, at the end of the day, should have killed him, shouldn't we?
Yeah, yeah. It was still, I think, a really good ending. Like, despite a major character death, but to me, Miss, like, I think the most important character death is one that happens off screen before we even get started, which is Cairne Bloodhoof.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing, like, because it still carried a really interesting weight going into Mists.
Definitely. So was that was told in a novel, or
it was in like a short story, wasn't it?
Short story.
Shoot, my memory of where that actually transpired is bad.
Yeah. And you saw like a lot of fallout from that at the beginning of Cataclysm. And it was weird because Cataclysm, for a lot of races and a lot of places, were dealing with the fallout of stuff that had happened while you were away. You woke up one day and suddenly everyone was coping with stuff that you'd not seen happen.
Okay, so it was the Shattering novel.
Quite right. But yeah, he died in one-on-one combat. She cheated. He died. Garrosh cheated by accident, I think, didn't he? Didn't Garrosh cheat by accident? His blades were poisoned, but he didn't know. But he killed Cairne Bloodhoof anyway, and all of that. And so yeah, is that because I didn't know who that was because I was
that was pre-Cata, but they didn't really pick up those threads until Mists.
Yeah,
like there's a little bit of it in Cataclysm, but with Garrosh in the spotlight of Mists, it is brought more to the forefront.
Yeah, totally. There's just a really good fan art of Cairne and Garrosh having like a naked fight, which is really good. And they are so bulging and naked and glistening. You find it. It's really good. Maybe it's not even a fan art. Maybe it's official. It's very good.
I think the one you're thinking of is official art.
It is official art, is it? Brilliant.
It's the one with Cairne dead in the foreground. Yeah, that's an official piece of art.
It's good. Much muscle.
God, it's like a Frazetta painting. Garrosh has never looked sexier. I've never attributed sexiness to Garrosh, except for this one piece of art.
So was that as someone who knew what was going on with Cairne? Because it kind of didn't register with me, that story beat. Is that something that, because I wasn't playing the game at the time when I was. Wait, so I mean, but I wasn't as into the lore and story back then. So is that something that you noticed and that had sort of an impact on the wider way you felt about anything?
Yeah, it's absolutely, and that's why I remember it, is because I didn't read The Shattering, but then I started kind of reading up on what the hell happened, because there was all these in-game like allusions to the death of Cairne, and it playing a big role in kind of a bunch of the various horde leaders' distrust of Garrosh, despite the obvious fact that he's just like an orc Hitler douche, but. But I don't know. It's interesting because like I think it was the last episode of this podcast. I was complaining about how I think they really bumbled the whole in-game Theramore situation. Like it's just so lame how it played out in game. And yet, the fallout was interesting, but I don't know why I'm like whatever and totally okay with Cairne's death happening out of game because I like the way it plays out later on. But then other things annoy me. I don't know. I can't quite pinpoint what the difference
super
is.
Interesting. And I guess, would Theramore have been more effective for you if you hadn't had like a really janky in-game cutscene and then an underwhelming scenario to go with it? If they just left it in the books, would it have been better for you?
Maybe. Who knows? And maybe it just plays into like I didn't read the Shattering and found out about it after the fact, and so I kind of just read it as a cliff note on like Wowpedia as opposed to actually reading a full-length novel. Because like I was really invested in the whole Theramore situation because I actually read Tides of War, and it still is my favorite WoW novel that I've actually read. And so seeing it play out haphazardly in game was just disappointing because it was so much more grandiose in my mind. Whereas I had nothing to go off of for Cairne. So, but it's to me, I look at the death of Cairne playing off screen and liking the fallout of it very much in the same way where I was clearly unhappy with the motivations behind the burning of Teldrassil, but I'm really liking how they're playing with the fallout of it.
Sure.
So
yeah, I think they've got much better at weaving death into the storyline and showing the consequences of that kind of thing. I think Cairne's probably quite a good example of that. Maybe one of the reasons it felt okay with Cairne was because you were at the stage in the game at that point where basically unless you were a raid boss, you weren't getting a cinematic showing your death. So like dying in a book and having explained that way and then that death having a tangible impact on the game afterwards is about as big a deal of a death as any character could really hope for in the game up to that point. So in terms of where the game was at that moment in time, like Cairne's death is one of the better ones, like one of the more meaningful ones. Not only does he get a whole story kind of leading up to it with lots of cool character moments in the Shattering and what have you, and like a lot of pathos to his death with his son, and like a kind of an injustice for his death and a heroic death, told in glorious bookage. But then, you have an expansion where everything is up in the air because of that and because of the actions leading up to his death and because of the aftermath of his death. And it's still having a major impact on the story. I mean, in terms of WoW deaths, that's certainly up until the beginning of Cataclysm, that's significant. That's like a lot more impact and a lot more space than most character deaths had ever been given up until that point. Certainly one who wasn't an antagonist, certainly a protagonist's death. Because I can't really think of any other protagonist deaths that were given that much attention, really. Bolvar, possibly. But
Varian.
Then he turned out not dead, so,
Varian, but later on, that came after.
Yeah, exactly. Later on, there's lots of examples of that. And maybe that's where their tack changed was, it's like, hang on.
And really, I think, this is me, maybe I'm projecting, but Bolvar, to me, it became memorable because of his death, because it was in that cinematic. Bolvar was just like rando NPC that I didn't give a shit about until Wrathgate.
Yeah. And like, I mean, I know that's a really cheap way of making you care about a character, right? Is having them die. I think quite a good example of that is Runus the Shamed from Legion. He's a really cool character with a really cool voice actor, but if he just disappeared at the end of the quest line with a cheeky quip, that'd be great. And you'd be like, yeah, whatever, fine, okay. But he doesn't. He becomes like what are they called? One of the mana-starved Nightfallen.
The Withered.
There we go. Yeah, the Withered, thank you. He becomes a Withered, and it's, incredibly like emotional, and he kind of totters off into the distance, and he's essentially dead. He's not there anymore. So
it's because they literally they tell the death makes it a full arc. Like it's its own little mini story. It's like a weird in-game caution for addiction that has weirdly stuck with me in a silly MMO.
But also, I mean, I don't know, man. I don't know if it's a cautionary tale. The message does seem to be addiction's absolutely fine as long as you've got a really solid supply.
I guess, yeah, it's a good point.
Like if it is a tale, if it is a cautionary tale, the message certainly appears to be.
Isn't it more? It's like it's okay if it's natural substances and not artificial. I think that's actually the moral.
Absolutely fine. Just don't let demons steal your supply.
Mushrooms, not heroin, is the moral of that story, Taliesin.
I'm just not sure. I'm not sure we should really be reading too much into
we
like
here
the
at WoW Killer do not condone the use of illicit substances.
Okay, so this fits. I promise. This isn't too much of a tangent, right? But when I was an actor for many years, and there's like in America, there are shows that basically all actors end up on if they're kind of jobbing actors, right? So you've got Law and Order and shows like that, and like the joke is that if you're an actor for long enough, you'll be on that show in some kind of guest like starring role or something like that. You know, it's like,
I mean, in America, we have this opinion of British actors and Doctor Who.
Oh, right. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. We make that joke about Doctor Who as well. And, you know, we've got other shows like that as well. One of them was The Bill when that was on. One of them is EastEnders, which I have been in, which is like this soap opera set in London. And one of them is called Casualty, which is set in an ER ward, right? It's set in a casualty department in a hospital. So, like, obviously, every week there are many guest stars turning up with their ailments and things like that. And, you know, drama happens in the wards of the hospital, both with the patients and the overarching like season storylines with the characters. So it's like a drama soap opera sort of thing. And I was in that as one of my first jobs when I left drama school. And I was all like, oh, cool. And I auditioned and I got the role and everyone was like, oh, what, do you have a cool injury? Do you get like burned or something? Or I was like, well, in my episode, there's an explosion in a factory that makes Chinese food, right? So loads of people were walking around with huge burns on their faces and stuff like that. It was pretty cool. But that wasn't my storyline. No, my storyline was I was a 16-year-old boy who had lost his virginity with his girlfriend. And she had a latex allergy, which made her flare up. And she was so embarrassed that she dumped him and then went to the hospital because she didn't know what was going on, right? And it's not quite such a good storyline. But and then I turn up and I'm like this pathetic guy who doesn't know why he's been dumped. And they're both too embarrassed. He thinks it's because he's rubbish at sex. But really it's because she's got a latex allergy. And I remember once we worked, you know, there's a kind of like a house style working out what had gone wrong here sort of thing. And they finally like suss it and they work out what the problem is. And they're like, oh, you've got a latex allergy. Ah, your boyfriend's penis isn't evil and didn't hurt you. It was just the latex. There we go. Excellent. And he probably is very good at sex. There you go. Excellent. Well done.
Thank you for this aside, Taliesin. This is definitely not completely off the rails. And
No. So the nurse who has been like, you know, the main character throughout this storyline, the kind of the regular character in this storyline, she's like, and they're like, okay, well, that's great. We know that going forward. Good. So what should we do when, you know, we want to have sex? And she was like, well, you know, you can get latex-free condoms, but also you can just not wear any at all. After all, you wouldn't wear wellies to go for a paddle in the sea, would you? And even as we were filming it, I was like, I'm not sure this is the message we should really be telling at this stage. I'm not sure we should be telling kids who are about to like lose their virginity to each other that, you know, maybe just don't wear anything just in case you've got a very rare latex allergy.
I'm going to fight every instinct in my podcast host body to course correct and bring us back on subject and ask you, what are wellies?
Rain boots. Wellington boots. Yeah.
That's a horrendous message.
Isn't it a bad message? That's what I thought.
That is an absolutely horrendous message.
I was like, this is not a good message.
Yeah. Okay.
You are kids. Don't forget. Great. I mean, that you wouldn't get that message at the end.
Well, thank you. I think I figured it out because, you know, you do podcasts long enough with the same people, you start to notice, you know, tics of theirs. And so you going, I promise this isn't too off topic. I think is the equivalent of when I do podcasts with Scott Johnson and he goes, this isn't a spoiler, but ... And it's always a spoiler. It always is. So for you, That was off topic. That was real. That was real in the weeds.
Oh, it's on topic. It's on topic. Like, that was a bad message in the storyline for kids, telling them not to wear protection when they have sex, just in case they have a rare latex allergy. And I think, reading the message of Runus as being it's okay to be an addict as long as you've got a strong supply is probably just as dangerous. That's all I'm saying.
Boy. Yeah. Thank you for reminding me how we even got there. I appreciate it.
Thank you. I felt I did need to remind you at that stage.
Yeah,
yes.
Yeah. So was Runus your answer for in-game death that really stuck with you?
No. Although clearly it does stick with me. And it does for many people, I think. I think it's one of the obvious ones. And for such an essentially unimportant character, and I think Legion did deaths incredibly well. Like, who didn't do deaths well? Warlords of Draenor. And look, we talked about Warlords of Draenor a lot on this.
Warlords of Draenor also just had kind of a problem. It had a problem with its deaths because of it being this alternate timeline. Like it was. I wasn't sure how much to give a care about the deaths because of the alternate timeline. I think it did the Garrosh death just fine.
Actually, no.
Garrosh death is good. That's a solid scene.
The thing I like about the Garrosh death was they did it. And I can guarantee when Chris Metzen came up with the concept for that death and that cinematic, I guarantee you he saw nothing wrong with the way that Thrall killed Garrosh at all. Okay? And nothing wrong with that. He's like, yeah, and then a hand comes out the ground and like lightnings him and it's awesome. And like, they're like, cool, we'll make that cinematic. That'll be really good. And it's a really good cinematic. I think it's a fitting end for Garrosh, although it seems that maybe we haven't seen the last of him. And it was a really cool moment in the questing. I really enjoyed it. Because it was two characters that I actually gave a shit about. Because it was two characters like from where I was from, and like who I were invested in. Unlike every other character in that expansion who I just did not care about at all because they weren't even the characters that they were. They were just like a different version of them. So I was like, oh, Velen's dead? Oh, he's not really though, is he? My Velen's not dead. Your Velen's dead. Your bootleg Velen is dead, but I don't care about him. I care about my Velen. I don't care. I'm not sad right now. I'm relieved that it's not my Velen that died. I'm glad your Velen died. My Velen's all right.
It's fake Velen. It's extra Velen. It's all right. We've got a spare.
So mine could live. I'm down with that. I'm absolutely fine.
That's like being sad that you popped the tire and only to 2 seconds later pop your trunk and get the spare out.
Yeah, totally.
It's like, no, what will I ever do? I guess I'm just going to open the trunk or boot.
Garrett, it's not even like that. It's like you open your trunk and to put something inside your trunk and you accidentally puncture the spare. That's what it is.
You're right. It's on your car. You didn't even break the proper, like the main full size one. Yeah. Yeah.
You just accidentally given your spare a puncture and you're like, oh, well, I guess I can just drive to the garage and get a new one since I can drive.
You're off to kill some vampires and you're being haphazard with your stakes. It's fine. It's fine.
But like the Garrosh one was really good and I appreciated it. But I love that, like, you can guarantee that Chris Metzen saw nothing wrong with the way that Thrall blatantly cheated in the Matgora to beat Garrosh. And then the community kind of got hold of it, of the idea, and everyone was like, actually, he did kind of cheat. Actually, didn't he, in the Matgora where you're not allowed to use magic? So, I mean, it was definitely cheating, and I like that how Blizz then made that a thing, and they were like, once Chris Metzen left, they were like, yeah, you know what? He did cheat. Yeah, totally, absolutely. We're going to make him be really sad about that, and you're going to get the Doomhammer. It's all going to work out. But the actual death was really good. The actual death was great, and that was good. Yeah. Nothing else death-wise in WoD was at all.
I think it was really the single best story beat of the entire expansion.
Oh, without a doubt. It's the only one that meant anything. Well, because it was the only one that was like a proper play out of the story. Because, I mean, think about it, right? WoD was sold as this expansion where it's like, oh, the Iron Horde are coming, everyone. The Iron Horde, they're like the old Horde, but with new technology. So like they're as vicious as the first Horde were, but they've got all the cool gear that, the Horde has now. So imagine that. Oh, wow. And this expansion, you're going to have to stop the Iron Horde. Will you be able to stop the Iron Horde? Who knows? They're so strong. They got, have you seen their big spiky ball things that they can look? Oh, they're so strong, the Iron Horde. You have to go through through the portal. Will you be able to stop them? Who knows? I don't know if you'll be strong enough, champions. And then you stop them, and you destroy the portal and you stop the invasion in literally the first 10 minutes of the expansion. Like, the storyline that Warlords Draenor was sold as was over in the first 10 minutes. Like, this whole, the Iron Horde is coming, guys! And you go in and... So then the rest of the expansion was you just hanging out in Draenor, picking off the Warlords one by one at your own pace.
I'm going to defend it. I'm going to defend it. I'm going to defend it and say a large part of that is just, I think, the trappings of World of Warcraft is a game where we can we can leave Draenor and we can go back to Stormwind or we can go back to Orgrimmar.
No, but like, what I'm saying is that being able to go back to Stormwind and stuff would have made more sense if we hadn't beaten the Iron Horde in the first 10 minutes. If, like, the expansion had been what it was sold as, which was us versus the Iron Horde, we've got to stop the invasion. Keep the stopping the invasion.
What I'm saying is, like, the Iron Horde was still a thing. It just, I think it would have had more impact if we were trapped on the other side of the Dark Portal with them and then had to deal with them. It felt less impactful because we could just be like, I'll just take a portal. I'll just use my Hearthstone. Like, but if we had that feeling of really being stuck on the other side, if we had the feeling that, like, Turallion would have had when he got stuck on the other side of the Dark Portal, like, that would have been more impactful.
I don't know, man. I've read 1,000 Years of War. It sounds like they had a lot more fun than I had in Draenor.
Listen, all we do is dump on Draenor here. Like, man, I'm going to define... I disagree with you here.
I had fun in Draenor. It was good. But the character deaths were pretty much meaningless.
Yes, and that stands. That point stands.
Really underwhelming Warlord deaths in that as well. I mean, I can never remember who it is that actually. I think it's not Black Hand, is it?
How could you forget when they zoom in and do a close up and put their name in giant font? Yeah, Taliesin, how could you possibly forget?
Super cool. But Orgrim's death is really disappointing in Warlords of Draenor. It should be quite cool, but it's not. And obviously Velen's one is, again, gets a cinematic and is really good, just like Orgrim's death. These are things that we've just been praising in other expansions, and how a cinematic adds like loads of kind of depth and meaning to a character death. For me, they didn't really do that in, I watched that Velen death cinematic and I was like, wow, I'd be really sad if that was actually Velen.
So I get a lot of shit for having the very first time, spoiler for Infinity War coming up, gone to see Infinity War and leaving having felt nothing when Spider-Man died. And everyone's like, oh, come on, that was sad. And I go, I know he's coming back. There's a sequel scheduled. I know he's going to survive.
Yeah, and there's also that it didn't take much to work out when you're watching Infinity War that it was like, oh, okay, so all the people that have died are the people that we know are coming back for other films, and all the people left alive are the ones that have been here for about 10 years now and probably don't have many more films in them. As they I mean, that was pretty obvious. But I thought the whole film had like this incredible kind of sense of impending doom to it. I felt like it was an incredibly bleak movie in a way that was like very, very brave. And I think it's one of my favorite Marvel. I like it better than Endgame, and I like Endgame just fine.
I would rather. I mean, yeah. If we want to get into that side, yeah. I think if I'm judging them as like on their merits as film, yeah, I'm with you. But I would rather watch Endgame. Like that's the one I'm putting on, like, have a good time. I want to hang out with my superhero friends.
Never sense in that movie for me. I never felt that they were going to beat Thanos at all. I never felt they were going to beat him. Like, there was never a point in that movie where I thought, oh, I reckon they can beat him.
That's what's good about the movie. I mean,
superhero movie or any movie where I thought the baddie was just unbeatable, like genuinely.
Well, yeah. And if we're somehow relating this back to something like Warlords, where the deaths are unimportant, it's more it works better from Infinity War because it's in the trapping of a film, and you can set it from one very for the most part one very specific point of view, which is the majority of the movie is like. That's Thanos' movie. So if Warlords had been very strictly from the perspective of the people that the denizens of that Draenor, like from their perspective and not ours, these tourists going to Disney World for the day, it probably would have been more impactful. But it's from our perspective. We're from a timeline that is just not being impacted by these deaths.
Yeah.
And I like the idea. That was That was a really nerdy offshoot just there. I liked that. That was fun.
No, I really like that. I really like the idea of going to Warlords being like going to Disney World. The idea of, hey, can you check your app, see how the queue for the LFR ride is?
Yeah, but like imagine all of the events of Draenor strictly from Yrel's point of view. It would have had so much more weight.
Well, she was clearly built up to be that, to fill that role that you're describing, you know, to be like our eyes and our kind of character insert into that world, but didn't really come off, did it? I know they cut like the whole middle section of the story and stuff and all of that, but
I'm avoiding that for the purposes of this conversation. Like I see what they were trying to do with Yrel, and I still don't think it quite worked just because of the trappings of playing an MMO.
But importantly, none of the deaths of any of the characters really, maybe Murad, but none of them really had any effect on me at all emotionally. Like, you know, the first boss,
Murad was kind of sad. It was a little sad. Sad.
Compare that to Legion, where you know, like it straight off the bat, like you had 1.5 incredibly affecting deaths, like right there, right at the very beginning, you know, in full form.
Varian's death may be the best character death, like in terms of execution.
Yeah, I think so.
It's so good. It is so well done. And
for a myriad of reasons as
I was still full-time Horde at the time. I hadn't gone back to kind of splitting my time between the factions or kind of rekindled my love for the Alliance, because that's, you know, where I originally started playing WoW. And so I saw that as a Horde player, as a main Horde player for years at that time, and it hit me. I was like, oh shit, I think I really like Varian as a character. I dig this. Varian is a character who had an interesting arc. The point I'm trying to make, Taliesin, is that that Varian's like death, it really hammered home how like it made me realize that I actually cared about the character, because I hadn't really thought about him for a while, but it had been interesting following his arc, because when he first is, I guess, reintroduced to World of Warcraft or brought into the game for the first time because he was just missing for so long, he is just angry at the Horde. Like, he is this just fierce warrior with anger issues, and through the course of raising Anduin, both in-game and out-of-game stories, you know, he softens. He becomes like a much more, I don't know, pragmatic leader.
Yeah, definitely. And like, you know, his was an arc that was there essentially from the beginning. I know he didn't feature in WoW, but he was talked about in vanilla WoW. He was talked about because him missing is the reason why Anduin was like on the throne and stuff, right? As Prince Regent, and you know, he was a major character in comics and books and lore to explain where he had been and why he was missing. So he's always been deeply rooted in the lore. And yeah, he kind of, I know it's a cliche to kind of point out how stories mirror that of their creator, right? But I mean, I think Chris Metzen has talked about how what Varian was kind of changed as he got older and as his own life changed, because obviously he does the voice for Varian as well. You know, and he'd been there, Varian, at some really important parts of the game as well. You know, he was in the invasion of Undercity, the infiltration of Undercity, I should say, in Wrath after the Wrathgate. He was there kind of not dismantling the Horde at the end of Miss Pandaria. He was incredibly important and a huge lore character, probably the biggest lore character we've ever had die in game, as in like protagonist wise. You know, like up until then, there were big names had died in WoW, and like incredibly important lore characters had died, but they were generally antagonists. They were generally people that we killed. They were generally like, it was generally a good thing that they died. Whereas, yeah, Varian was the first faction leader to die in that way. Definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
100%.
yeah. Thrall just copped out, and he was the first faction leader to die.
It could have been Kael'thas, but when we come in BC, he's already like turned and is off doing evil things.
I guess so. And also, the Blood Elves weren't a race in vanilla as well, so they hadn't been there. I know in lore they had, but like in the actual game, they hadn't been there from the very beginning. But that's a good point.
Yeah, Legion is a big like hold my beer with like main character deaths.
Mine got like, and people say Cairne. I mean, Cairne was a faction leader, but like he was the leader of the Tauren faction, right? Whereas he wasn't the leader of the Horde, but I mean.
And also, it took place out of
the
game.
Leader of the Alliance.
Yeah, Cairne was never in the spotlight story-wise the same way that Varian was.
It's true. And so and the
Garrosh before him. I give a lot of credit to Garrosh as this like the first kind of full arc told beginning to end in World of Warcraft that wasn't a carryover from Warcraft 3 or previous RTS. And Varian is very much the same way. It was kind of the second one. Like it was like the Garrosh sequel of like Varian's arc very much started in World of Warcraft and ended in World of Warcraft. I think to great effect. So I mean, I guess Varian technically his arc kind of started in a comic outside of the game, but they still the Varian story that happens strictly in game. It still has a very good beginning, middle, and end.
I absolutely agree. Yeah, and I think Anduin will be one of those characters as well, I guess.
Oh, absolutely.
And I mean, depending on when his end comes and if WoW is still going when Anduin's end comes, like I genuinely think there's I don't necessarily agree with it, but I think there's a valid argument that one can make that World of Warcraft is the story of Anduin. You know, like when you first get to Stormwind, he is a child on the throne who's been kind of thrust into power. His parents are both gone. And then you see him grow up and become a man, like in real time, and become a leader. And with everything that his is the only real coming of age tale in the entire game.
He's the Daniel Radcliffe of World of Warcraft. We got to watch him grow up. I can't wait for his Swiss Army Man phase.
Yeah. And like, you know, he's been there since the very first day. He's been there every day since. And he has changed probably more than any other character as well. Like I'd be surprised if you looked at how many models he's had and things like that.
Okay, I was like, narratively, he's kind of been a Boy Scout since day one.
Oh, he's gone through. He's toughened up, and he's had effect on characters around him and things like that. And he's got doubts and sadness, and because it's played out in real time. This is something that I think Legion did really well. I think something that's hard for MMOs to do is to make any threat feel high stakes, because by definition, patches last months and months and months, and you're doing the same things for those months. So it's really hard to give anything a real sense of danger and a sense of like, if we fail, the stakes are high and things will be bad. But Legion definitely did that. It always felt like the Legion invasion was big and serious, and the amount of just like huge dollops of character deaths that they chucked in there at the beginning, and the sheer violence and kind of brutality and non-sentimentalism of some of those deaths was striking and surprising. Like Varian dying, we kind of knew about, but he was the lead character in the cinematic trailer as well. And like really piling on with him and him missing his son and stuff and going to war. And then for him to be literally torn apart, blown up, and dismembered like he was at the beginning from a baddie that we knew from the previous expansion as well. So there was a carry on from that. It wasn't like, now the new big baddie turns out and he's so bad, we need to make sure everyone knows this baddie that we just made up out of nowhere is bad, so he's going to kill a main character. Like it had been building, and it was a character that we already knew that did it. And Vol'jin died in the same battle, and Tyrion died in that battle, and other people died in that battle, and throughout the whole Legion leveling expansion, Ysera died in Val'sharah.
That hit me like center of gravity from the side. Did not see it coming. Yeah. Just completely knocked me over with that particular death. I was like, wait, what? Like I was like also a little bit hoping, but I was fairly certain that Malfurion was going to eat it. and then Ysera dies. I'm like, what? No, I love Ysera. Like that hit me hard.
Oh, yeah, totally. And people just dying all over the place, basically. And in artifact quest lines and things, people were dropping like flies. And in order hall campaigns, it was fun if you were a Death Knight because you were raising them a lot of the time.
Yeah, or they were haunting you. Like Arthas was coming back and whispering, like talking shit about Bolvar. Like, what are
totally true. And I think like Legion really harnessed the power of character deaths and did it like exquisitely, like really, really well, and really nailed it to create a sense of danger. It kind of transcended any kind of sensationalism, right? It's sort of, it wasn't Game of Thrones style. People just die because we're all insensitive to it now because that's just the world and it's rubbish. Like there was meaning behind all of them, and it kind of, really sort of worked and furthered the narrative and helped create those high stakes. And you kind of feel like it's a trick they can't really pull off every time. But just from the very beginning, when you're getting ready to go to the Broken Shore the first time for the pre-patch, the fact that everyone was in the harbor and there was a sense of fear in all the NPCs, and you were like, oh, we have to eat our last meal and we have to drink our last drink and we have to like have a duel to warm up for the battle and stuff. And it was just really, really well done. And the deaths just kind of added to that. And I've told the story on the podcast before, so I won't go on about it. But I did go to work that morning, having got up early to play the Broken Shore and see the cinematic. I went to work shaken by that cinematic and by that character death, like genuinely.
Yeah.
Like,
Like, I'd like to make an out of World of Warcraft recommendation for anyone who has forgotten about it, hasn't watched it in a while, or maybe just hasn't seen it. But we got such an amazing tribute to Varian in a Heroes of the Storm cinematic that year at BlizzCon, when they unveiled both Varian and Ragnaros as new heroes for the game, with a cinematic. And I had forgot. I had put it behind me, Tally. I had gone to BlizzCon. I had finally gotten over that emotional Varian death, and then they showed that, and I was like, oh, you bastards. Yeah. Oh, that's hitting me in the feels. But it's really, really amazing cinematic. Go watch the Varian Ragnaros reveal on YouTube and refresh your memory if you want some feels. Legion also had some like pretty major villain deaths because we kill Gul'dan 2.
Yeah,
like we finally get to see a big full circle for Illidan in that kill, and also like I feel like I forget this frequently. We killed Jaden, who had been like a right bastard throughout a lot of World of Warcraft's history.
Totally. It's a good death as well. He got a good death too. He got like a little moment of kind of reconciliation with Velen right at the very end there before he blew up. And it was great. It was really, really cool. And like, he got a cinematic leading up to his death as well in the 8.2 kind of opening cinematic where you could see like the rage that he felt towards Velen. And it felt very personal. It went some way to unlocking a character that had always been very enigmatic. He was just like a big, like Chris Metzen drew a devil, right?
Yeah, in Burning Crusade, it was like, oh, the devil has come to Azeroth.
Yeah, totally.
That was my read of Kill
this baddie, he's going to be red and he's going to have horns and he's going to have wings. It's like, all right, Chris, brilliant. And so like he's always just been that kind of symbolic baddie. And that moment in the 8.2 cinematic where you see like the hurt in his face when he's looking at Velen and stuff like that. And it was great. And it really kind of filled out the character a little bit before wiping him out. And then in Argus, his character actually got some like more cinematics as well of when they were younger and stuff, which really helped too. And then of course you kill a Titan at the end of that as well.
I mean, is he dead?
Yeah.
Is he dead? He's in prison.
Yeah, but for what that means, like, there's loads of people that are dead that we're going to see in Shadowlands, right?
Yes. Yeah, that's a good point.
But and it just used it really well. Loads of deaths all over the place, and also death was just a constant in the questing and stuff as well. We've talked about Runus, and there's always the quest that sticks in my mind in Stormheim, where you come across these goblins, and they're like, can you go and help us out? We need to get rid of this family from this house. And they send you off on these little kind of quests. You need to get rid of these high mountain. Oh, the high mountain it was. So they need to get rid of these high mountain Taurens who are living in this house. And you're like, yeah, sure. You go away and you come back and the family have clearly been murdered by the goblins. And they're all like, they just decided to leave. handy, isn't it? Anyway, do you like these pants? Do you want them? And it's just like really upsetting, like really, really harsh. And there's nothing, and you just like, I just help these goblins kill this family. That's nice, isn't it? And like the High Mountain Taurens, that you kind of go running into the cave, and you just spent the last like 20 minutes making friends with the High Mountain Taurens, and then you all run into confront the baddie, and he just makes all rocks come out of the ground like earthbender style and skewer them like beef kebabs.
Yeah, he just impales full giant cow people.
Totally. And that kind of stuff was just everywhere in Legion, like just people dying randomly.
They really seem to find, like, be able to wield making you care about a character and then ripping them away, like at all various levels of weight, of like how important the character is, how big the character is, like starting with the monolithic death of Varian, but also interspersing all these very small little vignette, making you care about characters and then watching their demise all throughout the questing.
Sure.
And then if you're a Death Knight, going back, digging their body, desecrating their corpse and making them fight for you.
Yeah.
Which is why I hold that Death Knights, without a doubt, had the best Legion leveling experience.
Without a doubt. It was brilliant. It was so good. Like the Order Hall was immense. It was like I kind of feel like the Paladin Order Hall was the first one they designed and made, because it's kind of what you'd imagine an Order Hall to be.
Yep.
But I feel like the Death Knight one is definitely the one they had the most fun with.
Death Knight actually go and desecrate another Order Hall. That's how awesome it is. They're like, hey, do you want to go? You want to go break into the Paladin Order Hall and just steal their dead people? That sounds good, right? Can we do that? Let's do that. It's fantastic. Absolutely
the Naru who gets killed in Legion as well, of course. Like just gets completely blown up by Illidan and stuff like that. Yeah.
Do you think we're gonna get that explored, by the way, in Shadowlands? Like talking about dead characters, like Sally Whitemane, like one that has now come back and been resurrected as a Death Knight. It's like, did she at one point go to the Shadowlands? And then what happens when she was resurrected by the Death Knight jerks? Like,
yeah, I mean,
how does that work?
That's a few kind of characters who are Death Knights now who, in life were very anti-undead, Mm-hmm. So I feel like that will get explored in Shadowlands.
I just find that and also how hilarious would it be? Like, imagine Sally Whitemane had actually found peace in death and had worked her way out of, I'm assuming, Revendreth. Or found her peace in Revendreth. She's out in Revendreth living her best life. She finally found peace. She's like tending to a crop of creepy blood crops or something. And she's just one with herself, and then just gets ripped away and starts coughing up dirt. And just like looking at some Death Knights, just like, oh, you bastards.
It's true. I'll get reminded in the chat that Velen's son dies in Legion as well.
Oh, that's right.
Don't forget. After killing the Naru in the Exeter, just because, which is pretty awesome. All of this stuff, it was unrelenting, and all of it was done really well, which is not something that BFA managed to kind of carry over so well, despite the fact that you could say BFA starts with, it starts with the destroying of the World Tree, and if anything, you'd have thought the stakes were even higher at that point. And do you think it was let down by not having a major character death? And instead just the deaths of many, many people?
What, Legion?
Yeah, no, BFA.
BFA.
The opening of BFA and the burning of Teldrassil.
I don't know. There's so much of my thoughts about that are tied up in Sylvanas. But no, I think the Alliance side of the Teldrassil burning is extremely effective. Like, even though it plays out in game and it's less of a well-crafted cinematic or even animatic, even the what is essentially the Sylvanas Warbringers version of it doesn't really, it's from Sylvanas' perspective. We don't get a close-up on the cities of Teldrassil and the people, dying and trying to escape. So no, to a certain degree, I think it's different, right? It's harder to, I think, care about it. Like, it's easier to make me care about it. I think it's easier to write a story and make someone care about a single person's death. I think it's a lot harder to make the deaths of thousands feel like a person, like draw a personal connection to that, because it's just so many. Where it's easier to kind of think of
almost meaningless, aren't they? Yeah.
Yeah, but at the same time, I think they did. I think they did a decent job, and I think that's something that is actually empowered by the trappings of an MMO. Like,
yeah,
you may have made a night elf. I mean, for me, as someone who my first character was a night elf, like, it was like, oh damn, like they are literally burning my home. So yeah, to a certain way, I think, like, I don't know. I don't want them to make. I also don't want it to be formulaic. Like, don't start every expansion will start with a major character death, and every expansion will end with another major character death, and will intersperse some surprise deaths throughout the leveling experience.
But at the same time, you're talking about a brutal world which is constantly at war. Like, people are going to die, and they're going to die like quite meaninglessly. I've always felt like with Game of Thrones, it just wears you down. But I've always felt like a show that did that really well was The Wire, and like how many just incredibly mundane deaths happened in The Wire. Like, you know, major characters would just die because someone strangled them in prison. But it wasn't like, you know, a big deal. They just went into the library and then someone strangled them in prison, and that was it.
I think they were dead now. Last of Us does that really well too.
Yeah. And that's not the way WoW deals with these things. And I think one of the problems that BFA had with it was that the whole Teldrassil thing, they attempted very valiantly, but maybe not great from a kind of an appreciating it perspective. They attempted to both sides it, you know, which is always quite a hard thing to do when one of the sides is, you know, there are very fine people on both sides.
Of damn it, Taliesin. Come on, man. Do you?
Well, that's what they literally did, though.
No, I'm just yelling at you because thinking about that has been my world for basically the last 4 years, but especially the last week. And this is a wonderful escape. So thank you, Taliesin, for making me think about it again.
But that's basically how they played it. They were like, yes, okay, Horde, you did blow up the tree and stuff like that. And
but a whole bunch of didn't kill Malfurion in cold blood. See, it's totally
very fine. We
spared one bearded hippie who likes to sleep.
Exactly.
You know,
exactly. Very fine people on both sides.
Yes, we killed thousands of you. But, you know, we spared your archdruid. It's fine.
So yeah, and so it made it harder because like no one was allowed to just enjoy the storytelling so much in BFA because of that both siding. I think I'm never going to criticize Blizz for trying it, and I'm never going to criticize Blizz for taking the chance and doing something that could fail, and it did. And the deaths that worked much better and were a lot more enjoyable, like Rastakhan, for example, were the ones that one side was less invested in. You know, like, okay, I know Rastakhan was a Horde character and the Horde had been questing with him and things like that. But, you know, he wasn't someone that the Horde were very kind of attached to and you know, emotionally engaged with. It was clear that the story was all about Talanji and he was on his way out through that whole storyline. So, but you know, you were able to enjoy that as a death a bit more.
Yeah, I still think, though, like, I don't know. I think Teldrassil is going to be more effective for Alliance, and I think Rastakhan's going to be more effective for the Horde. So I don't know.
Yeah, no, that's true. That's definitely true.
I think that's okay. It just, it's like, there's a long period of time between those two events, even just as it rolled out in game. But yeah, to that degree, I don't know. When I think about it like that, you know, they brought the war back. They put the war back in Warcraft with those events.
Yes.
Like it feels like more like war writing, a little less than character writing. But yeah, I didn't dislike it. And then, of course, I mean, it all leads up to the big death of BFA, which is Sourfang.
Yeah. Yeah, and that was one that was kind of within the expansion. It was an expansion long arc. You know, no one had seen much of Sourfang before the cinematic, before the trailer cinematic for BFA. And as soon as you saw him, and you saw him looking that cool, alarm bells must have started ringing for most people, I think.
Yeah, it really seemed like, I wonder why they're spending so much time on you.
They've put a lot of focus on Sourfang there, and they've put a lot of effort into that lovely new model. Mm-hmm. And yet something tells me he is not the future of the Horde.
It could have gone either way, but like the second
grizzled, world-weary orc is not the future of the Horde.
God, the second he went and dug up Thrall, I was like, okay, yeah, he's dying. This is it. Like, I was holding, like I was still not completely writing off fan theories that Sourfang was going to survive and then become the next war chief. I was like, okay, there's still a chance. It might, maybe. And then he shows up in the Grand, and Thrall shows up. I'm like, all right, Saurfang's dying. They may as well have stabbed him with a extremely time delayed poison dagger in that scene. It was just like, yep,
Yeah,
it seals his fate. Thrall's back. Saurfang dies now.
absolutely. But again, very few characters are given that much time and space and attention and pathos and payoff. And he gets a funeral, dude. How many people get an Orgrimmar funeral in game? You know. Okay, so Varian got an entire like rebuilt park.
Vol'jin.
But yeah, Vol'jin, I guess.
Vol'jin. I mean, it gets attacked by demons.
Yeah, that one gets crashed. In fairness, I noticed for for Saurfang's funeral, they take it within the walls of the city just in case. It's like, remember last time we had a funeral outside? Let's do this one inside. Yeah, let's just go into the square.
I mean, I find it's probably just as likely of being crashed by Sylvanas loyalists, but yeah. That ended up not happening. So that's okay. That's okay.
No, I loved it. And and that worked really well. And there was a lot of kind of really interesting character stuff centered around death with Jaina's storyline in that, and Rastakhan and Bon Samdi on the Horde side. There was moments when it looked like characters were going to die, like with Mechatalk and things like that. But it never felt like the stakes were so high, did it, in BFA? So there was never a point where you go, oh my God, everyone's dying. And I never really felt like anyone could die at any point like I did in Legion either.
I had at one point thought that Sylvanas would die at the end of the expansion, but that was pretty early on.
Yeah.
And that kind of, I think it kind of, again, speaks to, you know, we don't agree on this, I guess, this terminology, but for me, I still think it was like maybe too many story threads, like in going in different directions, and I just didn't really know where it was heading.
Yeah.
Like I knew we would see N'Zoth, but I still like was unsure how they would wrap up Sylvanas's trajectory through BFA.
Yeah. And we talked about that a lot on this show and what the reasons we suspect for that are and what have you. So I won't go over it again now. But yeah, having that lack of focus did really affect BFA in that way. And yeah, it's true. I feel like Legion is the expansion so far that's got it all right when it comes to like character deaths and their purpose within the story and the effect that they have on the story and the impact they have on the player as well. And I think like Shadowlands has the potential to do that. I feel like, you know, we've already seen that in the Ardenweald Afterlives cinematic, how everyone was incredibly upset when Ursok dies in that, you know, when his life force gets like drained out of the pod, because there's a certain finality about the Shadowlands. Okay, you know that if you die in the way Ursok died in the Shadowlands, like we are not seeing Ursok again. Like he's gone, he's done. And so in many ways, the stakes do seem a bit higher again because of that. Because, you know, this is death. This is the machinery of death. You know, all the people that died in Teldrassil are there, and it's kind of important what happens to them there. You know, in their story, you know, their story could still have a happy-ish ending. And also there's just like, we see it in the Bastion Afterlives as well with, you know, it just feels like emotions are running high and stakes are high. And I feel like Blizzard have a lot of room to kind of play with emotional weight there. Which maybe they didn't so much in BFA in the end. Yeah,
and just, you know, from a narrative perspective, it seems much more focused than BFA. You know, without getting too much into like beta experience and whatnot, but like just it seems to be kind of a more of a return. Like Legion got to enjoy its side stories through the zones and the class halls, but they were very contained. They were either contained to you as the class you chose to play, or they were contained to the zones themselves. And then the overarch the whole time was the threat of the Legion.
Yeah,
and they stuck with that. And it sure seems to me that Shadowlands is kind of following that regard. Hell, it's probably pulled back even one more from Legion, because the covenants are kind of tied into the zone stories. You know, they're not like class specific. So it's not like you have your zone story, then your class story, and then your expansion overarching story. In Shadowlands, it looks pretty much like we have our overarching expansion story and then like our zone specific beats. And that's kind of like, those are our two main narratives that we're playing with. And that honestly excites me. It's like, simplify it, for the love of God. We have so many characters and so many races and so many classes and so many factions. Like, simplify your narrative. You know, I'm fully aware. Earlier in the episode, I said I don't want it to be formulaic. However, I'm going to undercut my own statement there.
But I think it's a case by case, isn't it? You know, like if a death is well done, it's well done. And if it appears in the same stage as a similar death in another expansion, that's not really important. Like it's, you take each kind of character beat, whether that be a death or not. You take every kind of narrative beat on its own merits.
Yeah.
And that's on its own terms. You have to do that with deaths as well.
Yeah. And so to put a cap on this, Taliesin, I want to hit you with what I would like to be the end topic of this episode that I did not prepare you for.
Sure.
Who do you think dies in Shadowlands?
What, dies forever, ever? Like for keeps?
Who doesn't make it out of this expansion alive?
Bolvar.
Damn right.
Is there anyone who thinks Bolvar's coming out of this one? Like, I'd be fascinated to know.
Does he replace the jailer?
Maybe, but I think maybe Sylvanas might be doing that, or I think maybe the machinery of death will be slightly different by the time we finish. Who knows? Okay, so I think Bolvar definitely. Maybe we could even see each of the first ones or the eternal ones bite in it as well. Would it surprise you? Because like obviously Sire Denathrius doesn't look like he's going to last the end of the first raid.
No.
What about, you know, the Winter Queen and the Primus is already missing. And the Archon from Bastion as well.
Winter Queen's gonna make it because she already has like an army of stands.
Yeah, true, including me. Count me in that one.
Yeah, Sire Denathrius definitely, you know, dead by the end of the first raid.
Yeah, the
sure.
Arbiter is a safe, is not a safe bet, but it's a, you know,
I'm not sure the
bet.
Arbiter matters because I think the Arbiter is not going to like Arbiter doesn't strike me as a character that's going to carry a lot of personal narrative weight.
Yeah, I agree. I think Bolvar's the big one.
Yeah.
Do you think someone like Thrall or Jaina could go?
I think Jaina's going to take a big backseat this expansion. I think she's going to go the way she did in Miss. We're going to be like, oh, hey, where the hell did Jaina go? Except it'll make more sense here because she kind of already had her arc. It made no sense in Miss for Jaina to get like shafted the way she did.
Yeah,
she just had a major character turn, and then just we don't really know what to do with her. We're going to put it aside. She felt like Luke Skywalker in Force Awakens. They were just like, we don't know how to deal with this character, so we're just going to not include her. But it makes more sense for me for Jaina to kind of take a backseat here. Yeah, I think Jaina survives just by virtue of probably not being involved in this narrative all that much.
What about Tyrande?
I think there's a chance Tyrande could die. But I freaking hope not, because I just don't find Malfurion that interesting. And Tyrande is the most interesting she's ever been.
Yeah. She's rocking. I don't think she will either. If I had to put a bet on like a main character from Azeroth dying, who isn't already dead, and isn't Bolvar, I'd take a stab at Thrall. And honestly, like my logic for that is pretty simple. My logic for that, or Gen Greymane would be another one. Kind of the Alliance, Saurfang, you know. At
some point, we need to thrust Anduin into a proactive role.
Oh, sure.
And I think Gen's death would do that.
It's been pointed out that Gen didn't go to the Shadowlands, but I mean, that's okay. He can still die in the expansion.
Yeah.
So I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if Gen bit it. I feel like Gen or Thrall are good shouts, and with Thrall, it's purely because honestly, like it must be annoying for Chris Metzen to have to keep going in and recording voices.
But he just named his company War Chief, so
true. You know, he's just started a new company. He's busy with his tabletop stuff, which sounds awesome, and it's great. He just might not have enough time to go, you know, be at Blizzard's beck and call whenever they need a voice.
Send him a bunch of foam to tape on his wall and a nice microphone. He'll be fine.
Well, actually, I think didn't someone else already do Thrall's voice for Hearthstone or Heroes recently?
Oh, I'm
like a month ago.
Unaware
because
of that.
For that precise reason, Chris Metzen couldn't get in because of the COVID, and he doesn't have the facilities at home to do it. So someone else recorded a couple of Thrall lines, I believe. I remember seeing a couple of tweets about it from the actor in question. I can't remember the actor's name.
Chavern was saying the same. Some prominent anime voice actor. But no, this is the first I'm hearing about it. I'll have to go look that up.
Maybe paving the way.
Yeah. So the big one is Sylvanas. You think Sylvanas is gonna survive, quote unquote, in some form, either in a second undead Shadowlands form or just in general?
I'm gonna say yeah. I'm gonna say yeah. I think so. I think she will
be as realizing the error of her ways and ushering in a new time of peace in the Shadowlands as its new keeper, or as a bigger, worse, badder version of the jailer, having usurped him?
If I was in charge, this is what I would do. I would have her be as all-out evil as you want to have her and have fun with it, right? Like, it's already clear from the story trailer that she appears to genuinely put hope into the jailer. And, like, does certainly appear to genuinely kind of be on his side and believe in the things that he is fighting for, whatever those may turn out to be. And I like that. I much prefer that to, I'm playing 20D chess here and I'm going to turn around and save you all from the jailer. Like, now, maybe it'll turn out the jailer's fighting for good things, maybe not. But either way, I like that the idea that she's totally on board with it and that she believes in it. Mostly because I just like the idea of her believing in something and kind of putting faith in it. And after the last few expansions, you could argue after forever, since she died the first time at Arthas's hand, she's never had that. Like being part of the Horde was out of necessity and they never really belonged there and they never really felt at ease there. And they were always like the kind of the black sheep of the Horde and the ones that no one trusted, and for good reason. And I really like the idea of her, having a cause that she actually genuinely believes in and fighting for that. And, maybe we put an end to that and we stop it and we finally give her the peace of death that she's never been allowed to have. And the idea that it's like, well, the jailer didn't just kind of almost destroy reality or whatever. The jailer also, by taking you straight to the maw, he robbed you of your chance of the afterlife and he robbed you of your chance of redemption. But you know what? There's a place where you go for that, and it's Revendreth. And like, I like the idea that we leave her in Revendreth like she should be, like is her right to kind of, maybe she'll find redemption, maybe she won't. But the important thing is she's got the chance, which she doesn't have at the moment. And like, she has had that right and that chance taken away from her. When she threw herself off of the top of ICC, that's when she should have gone to Revendreth or Maldraxxus or somewhere else, and instead she came face to face with the jailer for whatever reason and enlisted by him, and she and thrust back into Azeroth, and back into undeath, and was robbed of that chance of the afterlife and of redemption. And I would love her to I would love us to not redeem her, not her redeem herself throughout her actions in Shadowlands, but just to be given the chance to find redemption as everyone who goes to Revendreth deserves, And I that to me is like suddenly incredibly interesting, because it means you can make her actions be like flat out evil and despicable or just plain wrong in the expansion itself, because her redemption doesn't have to be earned through her actions in the expansion. She doesn't have to turn around and go, aha, I was a goodie all along. Or she doesn't have to turn around and go, oh, actually, you guys are right. Now I will fight for you. She just needs to be like, I deserve a chance at redemption in the afterlife, just like everyone. And we can leave her there. We don't have to think about her for like 4 or 5 expansions. But the important thing is she's got her chance.
So we also, multiple episodes ago, talked about how Arthas is due a chance at redemption. So are we literally going to leave Arthas and Sylvanas powwowing in Revendreth together? Is that, Tally, what you say a perfect ending to this expansion?
I don't think that's how Revendreth works. I don't think, and no one wants to see Sylvanas do a Kerrigan, right? That's everyone's biggest fear, I think. Like, no one wants Kerrigan Sylvanas. And I just feel like so basically the Revendreth thing is a way that gets me what I want from the expansion. I want the writers just be able to enjoy Sylvanas being a baddie with everything that entails, because I think she's an incredibly enjoyable Sylvanas baddie. I think, like, you know, she's great baddie, and I like, you know, the look in her face when she talks about the jailer and that she believes in it. And I don't want her to be tricking anyone. Like, I'm done with Sylvanas playing 5D chess and tricking people and having like an unclear objective. I want to know what Sylvanas' objective is. I want them to have fun with her being a baddie. But yeah, it would be cool if we didn't just kill her like some raid boss. It'd be cool if, you know, the arc. And I think from what I've seen of Shadowlands, it seems to be following these very thoughtful kind of themes. You know, like they are putting thought into it, and they are putting thought into what redemption and what death actually means, and how it's represented within the universe and stuff. And so, yeah, I personally would find it incredibly satisfying if we didn't just wipe Sylvanas out, but she got her chance. Because I think if she finds redemption in the game, as it were, and in the kind of main narrative, I'd feel a bit cheated. You know, if we just killed her as a raid boss, I'd feel a bit sad and disappointed. Whereas, like, being able to beat her as the baddie that she, I think, should be, and then she gets a chance at finding redemption herself, as is her right, as is the machinery, like that, I'm totally on board with, and that I find incredibly interesting. And yeah, awesome. I think that's really cool. I imagine a lot of people will probably disagree with me, but I think it's great. I'll be really disappointed when it doesn't happen.
I think there's a lot of directions I can go, and I don't think that's a terrible one. Because I feel like her trying to like one up the jailer and harness his power is just her taking the helm of domination with a different wrapper, which felt
maybe
obvious. Like it's where we thought it was going, and it was a big surprise when that's not where it went. And so I don't know. I feel like that would just be kind of obvious and kind of by the books, but
no, I can see that.
Yeah, I don't know. I like Sylvanas as a character, and a lot of my bummer thoughts with her being turned into just like a full blown villain is just like I always saw her as sympathetic, like felt bad for her and what happened to her with Arthas, and so I would like her to. It's a character I still like, and I would like to see. I don't know. I just feel like that she is just a permanently tragic character that deserves some joy.
Yeah. And I think if she's going to find joy anywhere, it will be in the afterlife.
Yes.
At last. The place that she's never been allowed to go to. You know, from Warcraft 3, she was killed, she was dragged back. At the end of Wrath, she killed herself, she was dragged back. She's been killed since then and dragged back. And, you know, we always thought she was lucky to have these Valkyr who could, like, kind of summon her back to Azeroth and save her from death. But I mean, they are more like jailers, it turns out. They're the ones stopping her just dying and like finding peace. That's a really interesting kind of reversal. We thought like the Valkyr were a gift, but it turns out they are like, you know, jailers or parole officers.
And yet, at the same time, if she died, she would have just gone straight to the maw, which she seems to want to be avoiding.
Would she have at the time? I mean, certainly not when she was killed in Warcraft 3, and probably not at the end of Wrath.
Well, you're talking about Valkyr, which was post her throwing herself off Icecrown.
Yeah, I guess so. But I mean, yeah, so whatever happened with the jailer there.
She was in like her own very specific and tormented purgatory.
Yeah.
Like she couldn't die because she just would have been stuck in the maw. And
I think we'll get some more context on that short story in Shadowlands as well.
I think so too. I'm wondering if Uther interfering at the top of Icecrown and ripping Arthas's soul and depositing it directly in the maw plays any role into why the hell Sylvanas even ended up meeting the jailer.
I think so too.
Yeah, if that like kind of pierced the veil and caused a little crack that Sylvanas may have slipped through.
Yeah. But if we are talking about it in terms of character deaths and things, I think that Nathanos' death is a good start for Shadowlands. I think it's really well done.
Yeah,
I think it hits the right beats. It made me feel some empathy for him as well. And it is an important part in the narrative. So yay! Awesome. That was a long episode.
It was. We're at 2 hours. Well, thank you, power outage in Florida. Much appreciated. So yeah, I think it's a good place to wrap it up. I absolutely love that cinematic too. Hopefully you got to see it in game, fine listeners, and if not, it's all over YouTube. Go check it out.
But you are supposed to see it, all right? So go and watch it if it didn't happen for you. It's not fair.
Yep. So as we bring this to an end, folks, if you want to write in and be a part of our monthly mailbag episodes, monthly with an asterisk, write into wowkillercast@gmail.com. You can follow the show on Twitter @wowkillercast. And we are also on YouTube if you want to watch the YouTube version over at youtube.com/wowkillercast. So go check all of that out. Taliesin, if folks are somehow unaware of your other WoW content, where can they find you?
I have a YouTube channel that I do with my wife. It's called Taliesin and Evitel Do Games. That's a misleading title. We only do WoW, really. And also a Twitch stream called Taliesin and Evitel, where you can watch us play World of Warcraft. And once we played Baldur's Gate 3, it was great. And also a Twitter where we only talk about World of Warcraft. So join us.
Also, I messed up our YouTube. It's just /WowKiller.
Oh, excellent.
No cast on that one. We actually got WowKiller on YouTube. So there is that. And for the podcast, please subscribe if you're listening to the audio-only version. I know you can stream podcasts nowadays, but it helps us out a lot if you subscribe to the show. And also tell your friends. Tell your friends about WowKiller. Tell them it's your favorite WoW podcast. It's okay to lie. It's okay. Everything else, this podcast included, that I do can be found over at amove.tv. I have a Hearthstone show over there. I have a Heroes of the Storm show over there. Check out The Angry Chicken. Check out Into the Nexus. And check out amove.tv. Also, my Star Wars podcast is back for the new season of The Mandalorian. So if you like hearing about adorable things eating eggs and why that is problematic, you should go listen to that. No spoilers. That's going to wrap it up for this episode of WowKiller. Thanks so much for watching, everybody. And until next time, nope, won't be out yet. We will not quite yet see you in the Shadowlands. I guess we'll see you doing a TOC dailies like it's freaking 2010. Bye now.
Yeah, totally. Saving up for a not quite so good armor set. Yeah.
Oh, it's not the best.